If you're here for the first time, hi, I'm Jane, a writer who's written over a dozen novels. I am currently working on my 12th novel actually on Wattpad, so if you happen to be, a Wattpadder, you can check me out. Today, I'm here to talk about something I've been meaning to for a really long time, which is why I switched from reading and writing erotica to clean romance. However, this is not me trying to convince you to make the switch as well, but if it's something you feel you need to do after watching this video, then I'll be so glad, so do let me know down in the comment below. To start you off, for those who don't know what a clean romance is a genre which has no mature content. So if you're the type of person who is looking for, a story, a romance story that focuses more on the character's journey and their struggles and doesn't show a lot of, what happens behind closed doors, then this is the genre for you. I'm just gonna take you guys back to when I started writing, which was in my early teens. It wasn't until December 2015 that I joined Wattpad and I started working on my first novel in 2016, the following year. And the first story that was published on Wattpad was a story I'd initially written a few years prior to when I joined Wattpad. And if you want to know more about my journey as a writer, be sure you watch this video. I don't want to sway from the main topic of this video. I remember I was also a reader on Wattpad and I was reading a lot of what authors were writing. I was working on my own story and I realized that there was a demand for erotica. By that time when I joined Wattpad, I would say that I was still growing as a writer. I was basically an aspiring writer at that time. I still feel like I am that sometimes, probably am. And let's just say I was easily swayed. I didn't have my foot planted in the ground as a writer. I was still, learning, trying to find my voice, and I was just, by that time I was working on books that I'd been inspired to write from, other content, movies, TV shows, and just different things. And they were just inspiration of other people's work. It didn't feel like I had gotten to a place where I could say I'm a writer. I remember thinking, oh, everybody's looking for this, everybody wants this, why don't I write something that people are looking for? And that was my first mistake as a writer, to be swayed by what is trending. And if you're an aspiring writer, I will tell you to not follow, what's trending. Just write what you feel like writing, what your heart wants to write, what you know in your gut is like, you just want to get that out. But if it's like you have nothing to write, then you may follow the trend. But for me, it was a mistake then to follow the trend. My second and my third stories on Wattpad were a result of following that trend. And it wasn't until my fourth story that I was like, okay, I'm no longer following the trend. I'm gonna write something different, but it still have a minutia of, the erotica, what was still going around in there, but I focused mainly on the character's journey, and there was still a little bit of, mature content in there, but not as much as I had put in the previous two that I'd written. Looking back now, I can see myself, like that was the moment I started, stepping out of that phase, which is why I'm not as proud of my second and third novels on Wattpad as I am of the others because of that phase. But I know that everything happens for a reason. I have grown as a writer because of that. I now look back and I see the things that I do want to do and the things that I do not want to do. I made the switch to clean romance in 2019, 2020 when COVID hit, and it wasn't a groundbreaking decision. It was just, I didn't even know at that point that I was making the switch to clean romance, but the stuff I was writing was no longer focused on behind closed doors. It didn't have a lot or any mature content, and I was so fulfilled writing those stories because it allowed me to focus on the stories of the characters individually and together, and other important characters in the story as well. And a lot of readers have said that it feels like writers who write mature content don't have a lot of plot, so that is what they end up with. But I have, like I mentioned, I read a lot of erotica, and there are many stories I read that were packed with so much plot, and it was just the occasional like mature content which I didn't feel like it was needed, because the story would have progressed beautifully even without it. And there are certain stories which I found were amazing, and other stories focused more on the mature content, which are the stories I believe that would not have that much content if they had taken out the mature content. And in 2020, it was the peak COVID period, and I remember that was the year I read probably the most novels I'd read in my entire life, and they were all erotica. When I read a book, I want to come out of the other side feeling inspired. Reading a book for me is like having a conversation with a friend. When I leave the conversation with you, I want to leave feeling refreshed and fulfilled and rejuvenated and ready to conquer the entire the entire day and the week and the month. Reading erotica was just like, it drained me in a way. By the end of the year, I was getting to that place where it was no longer something I would go to read, because I love reading. Reading just relaxes me, but erotica didn't do that for me. It just kept me on edge. Like I said, it was not fulfilling, and as the year was slowly ending, I just knew my New Year resolution was going to be do not read another erotica, and it ended up being that way. I think I even stopped reading it by the end of October 2020, and then when New Year rolled around, it was literally like carved on my heart, like, you're not gonna pick up another erotica. A few months went by and I was doing great, and change is not easy, I will say that. Change is not, like, if you want to make a change, it has to be something you really want to do, and it's not something that another person can push you to do. And other people can encourage you and like pour into your cup and give you like inspiration to make that change, to be the one to make the decision to make that change, but they will not give you the willpower or a craving for you to want that change. They might add into that, but you have to be the one to make the move to allow that change to happen. And for me, it was something I really wanted. But like every change in life, there would be certain times where you kind of relapse, I would say. And I remember one time I just had a craving for it, and I ended up picking up one, and after I read it, I felt so much guilt. I didn't like myself after that, and I was like, why did you have to pick it up? And I remember coming to God in that moment, and I was like, God, I do not know what this is happening, but it feels like I'm stuck in this darkness, and I just didn't like where I was, and I poured out my heart to him. And I remember after that prayer, it felt like I hadn't prayed in so long. Like I wasn't going to God with a lot of things. Like I was just doing it just to, please my parents, or just because I'm a Christian. And I wasn't doing it because I was developing a relationship with God. I was just doing it because it was something that I was told I should do. And I remember that prayer didn't feel like that. That prayer felt like the beginning of something. And I remember after that prayer, it felt like I was in this room, a completely, dark room, and there was this light, like a hand that just reached out to me and just pulled me out of that darkness. I don't want to sound dramatic, but that is what it felt like. I just look back to that, that vision I had after that prayer, and I'm just in awe of God, and I'm so grateful to him for saving me. My life started to slowly change, and then erotica was no longer, I did not have the urge to pick up another erotica, but then it got to a period where I'd be scrolling looking for books to read, and I just have this urge to check out what the newest erotica was. I would remind myself of the feeling I had after I read one, and I'd just be like, no, we're not going back there. I don't want to feel shame. I don't want to feel unfulfilled. I do not want to feel like I've been completely drained. I do not want to feel that way. So I would remind myself of how I felt afterwards. Then that made it easier for me not to pick up one. And that year, funny enough, I'd signed a contract with a gaming company to work on a script for them. There was a lot of pressure in providing content that was according to their standards. I'm not going to mention the name of the company or the story that I wrote for them, because that was an experience I never want to go through again. Every time I wrote a chapter, the editor would send it back to me with notes telling me to expand on certain ideas and to take it in the direction of, you know, erotica. And I felt like that year was me trying to escape erotica, but then me literally walking through that forest of all the temptation I could possibly encounter, and God being, I am going to remove this out of you. And writing for that gaming company, I feel like it was like a way for me to get through that phase of my life and never ever look back, because it was something I didn't want to experience again. I was looking forward to my contract ending with the gaming company. I slowly started to realize what erotica had done to me versus what happens to me when I'm not reading erotica. It's like I went back to my roots as a reader, as a writer, and it's something I never want to lose again. That year I was reminded why I started reading romance in the first place. It's just all this, you know, those tiny sweet moments between the characters that it just makes you believe in love. Erotica is not that. It takes so much away from, you know, those sweet moments. What is written in erotica is not necessary, because that is something that should happen behind closed doors. Towards the end of 2020, when I decided that by next year I wouldn't read another erotica, I sat with myself and I was like, now that you're not gonna read erotica, what are you gonna read? I was reminded of this novel I read. It was my sister's. I spent 2 to 3 months searching for that novel. It was the first novel that I read that was imprinted in my soul, and I just wanted to go back to that. The story was by Debra Clopton, and it was titled The Trouble with Lacey Brown. It's so funny how I found the novel. I remembered there was a pink Cadillac on the book cover. I was trying so hard to remember it, and I knew there was the word trouble in the title. And when I found it, it was at that moment, it was then that she realized, and by she, I mean me. It was then I realized that it is a Christian romance novel. And I don't know, it just felt like everything lined up so perfectly. And I picked up that novel again and I started reading it the following year. My library just, you know, went from reading, you know, erotica to reading clean romance or Christian romance, and I much preferred the Christian romance, because when I was done reading, I felt like I'd learned so much more about God or what a Christian, you know, relationship should, you know, be rooted in. It's just so nice to be able to see, you know, two people who have a love for God to just, you know, come together. I was like, this is the type of stories I want to read. A lot of romance stories nowadays have been, you know, given the genre romance, but once you pick it up and you start reading the content, you find out that it's erotica. It terrifies me what is gonna happen, because I've seen a lot of people in the new generation that love reading. I have a little cousin who's a teenager, and I look at her sometimes and I'm just like, I hope you never ever have to read. It terrifies me just to think that she would pick up a romance novel one day and it's gonna be erotica. And because being exposed to mature content that young, you never know what would happen in the end. Thankfully for me, it's become a testimony. There is just so many areas I can see, you know, God working through it. In the moment, I wasn't able to, you know, see him and recognize him, but now looking back, I do see him. If you are thinking, oh, but Jane, I can't stop reading erotica. I've been reading erotica for a really long time and I really like it. Then I'm just gonna ask you to, you know, try reading a clean romance or a Christian romance for like one time. You don't have to be Christian to read a Christian romance. There's so much like tidbits of wisdom I find in these books, and I'm just like, this is something everybody needs to know, not just Christians. You can just try reading it for once. After you're done, you tell me, you let me know if you left feeling, you know, on edge or agitated, or like the energy has been sapped out of you. With clean and Christian romance, there is so much fulfillment and peace. You get to see the sweet side of romance. So do I think that you should stop reading erotica? Yes, I do. Is it my choice to make? No, it's not. That is your call, and if it's something that feels like a crutch to you or feels like a drug you can't do without, then it's probably high time you start thinking about letting it go. And that's my take on erotica and clean romance. Before we end this video, I should let you know I started working on my Christian romance novel. The first 10 novels I wrote on Wattpad, I felt like I was still finding my footing as a writer. After working on my 10th novel, just got me excited about my future as a writer. I decided that clean romance was something I wanted to switch to. Thinking about reading and writing clean romance gets me excited because it's the reason I got into writing in the first place. Getting to watch or read two people fall in love, I just get excited, and I just want to focus on the journey of the characters as individuals and together. And clean romance and Christian romance, the difference between those two is that clean romance is just focusing on the love story between the characters, and Christian romance focuses like a triangular relationship, you know, the horizontal one between the two main characters and their relationship with God. And I just love both of those, but getting to incorporate, you know, my religion into the stories I write, it's very fulfilling, which is why I started working on a book series titled Broken. I'm currently working on the second book in this series, which is my WIP. Broken, I started 2022 and I just finished it last year in October. Bruised, I started working on it early this year and I'm currently on it. This entire series is based on my journey and my testimony and how my life changed, you know, after developing my relationship with God. But my story is just a small part of the entire plotline of the series. The main character, McKenna, goes through her own journey, and an English boy, Atlas, they both go through their own journey, the darkness that they're stuck in, and encounter each other and God. So if you're interested in reading the stories, you can check it out on Wattpad for free. Also, if you're gonna read my stories, let me know down in the comment below. I'm gonna leave a list of authors who write clean romance and Christian romance down in the description below. So if it's something that you want to check, if you want to make the switch to clean romance or Christian romance, you can check out those authors. Let me know if you do and which one of their stories you enjoy. If you feel like there's something I missed in this video that I didn't touch on, I'd love to know more because I know I haven't mentioned everything. If I missed something, do let me know. Put it all down in the comment below. I'll make sure I get back to you. Anyway, that is it for this video. You know what it is. Till next time, till the next video, stay blessed.